Well, hey everyone, welcome back with us. I'm so glad you're here today. Let me tell you what we're doing. We have a mission as a church. It's love God, love each other, and love the world that Jesus, through his people, is working to restore. And we are in the year of outreach. We are underscoring that last great outward thrust of our mission because Jesus is restoring the world. And he's doing it through us. We want to be on mission with him. So earlier in the fall, we started out by, what does it look like when God reaches out? We looked at Isaiah 61, this great picture of the future that God is enacting. And it's not just something we're waiting for, it's something that's already here. Jesus launched his 3 years of outreach by citing Isaiah 61. Then we said, okay, what does it look like when we reach out? And we talked about 4 strategies for all of us. We can invite, testify, assist, and party. Party. We can open our hearts and our homes. We can extend hospitality to people who are so often lonely and forgotten. Well, this was such an important marker for us to talk about hospitality and party again. And we talked about how it was central to Jesus' strategy, that I thought, if we want it to be central to ours, one message would not be enough. We better park on this for a little while. So we're going to, for the next 3 weeks, party on. We're just going to party on and talk about the enduring power of hospitality. You might remember we said a couple weeks ago, Robert Karras, a New Testament scholar, said of Luke's gospel, there's meals and food on virtually every page. Jesus, all through Luke's gospel, is either going to a party, coming from a party, or at a party. You can literally eat your way through Luke's gospel. Well, we're going to look at 3 other stories of meals in Luke's gospel, and we're going to see what they teach us about really making this central to our strategy as well. So today, we're going to talk about seeking the forgotten. Seeking the forgotten. And we learn about this in a great story that's at a meal and about meals that we read of in Luke chapter 14. Now we're going to cover verses 1 through 24, but I'm not going to read it to you all in one fell swoop. It'd be too long. We're going to break it into some chunks, into some episodes. So here's how it opens, verses 1 through 6. One Sabbath, when Jesus went to eat in the house of a prominent Pharisee, he was being carefully watched. There in front of him was a man suffering from edema. Jesus asked the Pharisees and experts in the law, "Is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath or not?" But they remained silent. So taking hold of the man, he healed him and sent him on his way. Then he asked them, "If one of you has a child or an ox that falls into a well on the Sabbath day, will you not immediately pull it out?" And they had nothing to say. So here's the setting. Everything is prepared. The guests have arrived. The house is immaculate. The table is gorgeous. And the dinner is about to be served. And on the menu is fried Nazarene. On the menu at this Pharisee's house is Jesus. It's like we are going to eat this fake Messiah for lunch, and we've got it all set up. We're all here on the Sabbath. We know you're not allowed to work on the Sabbath. And we're all here, and it just so happens that this man suffering from edema is right in front of Jesus. This is clearly a setup. This man is here as a plant. He's being used by them. And they think, we got him. Because if Jesus heals on the Sabbath, he will have broken the law and disqualified himself from office of Messiah. And if Jesus doesn't heal this man, well, then he lacks compassion and he's discredited in front of all the people. We can't lose. But there's one thing they haven't factored in. Who they're dealing with in Jesus. Not only is he way more powerful and popular than them, he's way more wise and shrewd. They can't win. And Jesus immediately seizes the initiative, turns the tables. He almost like flips this table, almost like he did with the money changers in the temple. He flips it on them and he just seizes the initiative. It's like, okay, is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath or not? Well, they're not going to answer. They're saying that's why we've got this guy here. You answer the question. And it says next that Jesus seizes the man and heals him. It's this powerful New Testament word, epilabbanos. It means to take, but like forcefully. And you can do that in a good way or a bad way, you know? It's like in the old movies where it's like, guard, seize him. Or it could just be like where you grab somebody and you wrap them up in a bear hug. And one time Jesus was with his disciples and it says he seized a young child. Yeah, you imagine like a toddler running by and Jesus sees it, just scoops him up, sits him on his lap and says, you know, unless you receive the kingdom of God like this little child, you can't even enter it. Well, Jesus here, more happily like that, seizes this man with edema, this great swelling in his body, probably caused by either heart, kidney, or liver disease. He just seizes him and he heals him. He's like, looks at the crowd. If one of you had a child or an ox in trouble on the Sabbath, wouldn't you jump to it to immediately fix the situation? And they have nothing to say. But Jesus has said something profound. And here's a principle. The Sabbath is not for performing. It's not for performing your religious duties, for performing your worship. The Sabbath's not for performing. It's for restoring. As Jesus said elsewhere, man wasn't made for the Sabbath to perform for it. The Sabbath was made for man, to let him enter into the restorative rest of God. So, Jesus turns the tables, but he's not done. Here's what we read next. When he noticed how the guests picked the places of honor at the table, he told them this parable. When someone invites you to a wedding feast, do not take the place of honor, for a person more distinguished than you may have been invited. If so, the host who invited both of you will come and say to you, give this person your seat. Then humiliated, you will have to take the least important place. Well, here we see just Jesus, again, turning the tables. Before they were carefully watching him, but now he's carefully watching them. He's noticing something. How they're jockeying for position at the table. And we do this because we know that there are some seats that are better than others. You know, if you're in a car with somebody else, it's great first if you could ride up front. If not there, if you can ride in the back seat next to the window. If there are 5 people in the car and you got to sit in the middle of the back, that's the worst seat. Nobody wants that. At a dinner table, you know, the head of the table, the foot of the table, that's great seats. The center of the table, that's really great seats. The corners, not so much. And in this situation, where the people were sitting for dinner, was almost certainly what's called a triclinium, a U-shaped table, the kind we make sometimes. You know, you might take 3 8-foot tables and make a U. The host sits right at the center of the base of the U. The right side and the left side of him are great seats for prominent guests. And then it cascades on down around the U from there. Jesus notices that everybody wants to get as close to the host as they can. And he says, you know, when you're a guest at a meal, don't do it that way. I know that's how you do it, but where I come from and where I'm taking people, that's not our value system at all. Where I come from, we love to serve more than be served. Where I come from, we like to consider others as more important than ourselves. Where I come from, it's more blessed to give than to receive. And that means that we would give up a seat to somebody else. And after all, Jesus says, my goodness, your own wisdom would dictate that there's the possibility that if you take a prominent seat, someone more important may show up. Maybe they're running just a few minutes late. And now it's an awkward situation because the host says, you know, I actually was reserving this seat for him. So I'm going to need you to give this up. And at that point, it's not like everybody's going to shuffle down one. No, you're going to get up and walk to the end of the table, and that's where you're going to be, and you're going to be humiliated. Jesus would add, what's merely a possibility in this situation is an absolute certainty in the kingdom of God. Because where we're going, the last will be first, and the first will be last. Where we're going, God exalts the humble, and He humbles those who are self-exalting. So let's not do it this way. Where I come from, here's the principle. Fellowship's not a pyramid, but a circle. Make sure everyone's a part of it. And let's do that. Let's do that, friends, in our hospitality, around our tables. Let's count others as more important than ourselves. Let's center other people, not marginalize them. And let's enjoy doing it. But now, Jesus goes on. He's not done addressing this situation. Verse 12, then Jesus said to the host, it's like, hey, while I'm offending everyone, I don't want to forget you. Jesus said to the host, when you give a lunch or dinner, do not invite your friends, your brothers or sisters, your relatives, or your rich neighbors. If you do, they may invite you back, and so you'll be repaid. But when you give a banquet, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, the blind, and you'll be blessed. Although they cannot repay you, you will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous. Now, in our day and age, we know that socially, there's a certain quid pro quo of this for that. I scratch your back, you scratch mine. I do something for you, you repay me. It happens socially. I invite you to my house. Maybe next time you'll invite me to your house. I pay for dinner this time. Next time you pay for dinner. And we have, all kinds of protocols with hostess gifts and thank you notes and all the rest. Well, just multiply that exponentially and get a picture of this gift and obligation system that ruled the ancient world. You would do good things, kind things for your friends, or more important people that you would want to be your friend. And then it automatically laid an obligation and burden on them to reciprocate in some way. And probably to do it like with a notch up, it always increases. Now I've got to do something more creative, a little bit more novel, a little bit more special. And Jesus says, that's such a diabolical system. It's just so burdensome. Why don't you free yourself of that and do something really radical? Rather than using hospitality as a way of climbing a social ladder, why don't you descend the ladder and get some people on it in the first place? Go out and reach out to the poor, the crippled, the lame, the blind, the last, the least, the lost, the little and the lonely, the people that the world has forgotten. Why don't you reach out to them and bring them in? They won't be able to repay you. My goodness, they won't have the money to throw another dinner party. They might not even have a way to get to Hallmark and buy you a card. But that's going to be the beauty of it, because you're just going to get to show them amazing grace that comes absolutely free of charge. And God Himself will repay you in the resurrection. The compensation He gives you will far outweigh anything another human can anyway. So free yourself from this system. Robert Capon, a scholar on this, says, drop the ledger. Stop the accounting. Because it's not just one more thing that can't save you, this system. It's the flypaper that catches everything that can't save you and leaves you stuck with it forever. Jesus says, guests, host, I want to free you from this system. Let go of this stuff and invite all the people who could never pay you back. This is what Rosaria Butterfield calls radically ordinary hospitality. It's radical because it's countercultural. It's ordinary because of all the ordinary people you serve in ordinary, everyday ways. Oh yeah, if you haven't read her book yet, Gospel Comes with a House Key, you got to read it. Here's how it opens. She says, radically ordinary hospitality. Those who live it see strangers as neighbors and neighbors as family of God. They see homes not as theirs at all, but as God's gift to use for the furtherance of His kingdom. They open doors. They seek out the underprivileged. They know the gospel comes with a house key. And so may it be for us, that we would literally follow Jesus' instructions and follow in His footsteps in this way. And recognize, here's a principle, hospitality is not a transaction, but a free gift. It truly is just a thing of grace. Well, now back to our story. Everything has gotten really awkward. Everybody's had their nose tweaked, and we haven't even started to eat yet. So a man chimes in, trying to subtly change the subject and get everybody on happier terms. Verse 15, when one of those at the table with him heard this, he said to Jesus, "Blessed is the one who will eat at the feast in the kingdom of God." Hey, here's something we could just all agree on. Blessed is the one who will eat at the feast in the kingdom of God. It's going to be blessed to be in heaven someday, won't it? And this guy thinks he's making peace. But Jesus here is feeling some kind of way. And He is not about to let this go yet. So Jesus is like, oh, you want to talk about the kingdom? All right. Jesus replied, a certain man was preparing a great banquet and invited many guests. At the time of the banquet, he sent his servant to tell those who had been invited, "Come, for everything is now ready." But they all alike began to make excuses. The first said, "I just bought a field and must go and see it. Please excuse me." Another said, "I just bought 5 yoke of oxen and I'm on my way to try them out. Please excuse me." Still another said, "I just got married, so I can't come." The servant came back and reported this to his master. Then the owner of the house became angry and ordered his servant, "Go out quickly into the streets and alleys of the town and bring in the poor, the crippled, the blind, and the lame." "Sir," the servant said, "what you ordered has been done, but there's still room." Then the master told his servant, "Go out to the roads and country lanes and compel them to come in, so that my house will be full. I tell you, not one of those who were invited will get a taste of my banquet." Now, again, our modern world is not so very different from the ancient world, in that when we're having a party, there are typically 2 invitations. The first one is the phone call or the evite, the text that says, "Hey, we're having a party on this date. Can you come?" You get the RSVP. Then on that day, everybody comes to your house. And when dinner is ready, the call goes out, "Hey, everybody, make sure you got your drinks and come to the dining table. We're ready to start." It was kind of like that in the ancient world. An invitation would go out for such and such a future date. We're going to have a big feast. I want you to come. You would RSVP and promise to be there. But then the day of the feast, people didn't gather at a certain time. You just waited for the feast to be ready, sometime at the end of the workday in the early evening. And then the servants would just go throughout the neighborhood and say, "Hey, I know you were invited. Come on, it's all ready." To not show up at that point would be every bit as insulting as if somebody was already at your house and the dinner bell rings and they say, "Oh, you know what? I got to go feed my cat. I just remembered I got to go mow my lawn. Oh my goodness, I've got to rearrange my sock drawer." That would be just horribly insulting. To have people arrive, but not eat with you. It was virtually that in this situation. "Hey, I just bought a field and have to go inspect it." You would never buy a piece of property without having already inspected it. Same with 5 yoke of oxen. I'm going to go now and try them out. You would never buy those oxen unless you had tried them out already and knew that they could do the labor. And besides, if you already own them, you're going to harness them up. You're going to yoke them up and start plowing here at the end of the day. They're your oxen. They're going to be there tomorrow morning. And then the guy who says, "I've taken a wife. I can't come." Bible scholars say, there's something kind of lecherous in that. It's like, hey, dude, I've got a wife, wink, wink. I got other things on my mind tonight. That's basically what he's saying. And the master hears this, is deeply insulted. He gets rightfully angry, but then he does something amazing. He turns his anger into amazing grace. He's like, all right, well, we are not going to waste this occasion. Go all through the town and bring in, the same descriptors that he had used earlier, the poor, the crippled, the blind, the lame. The last, the least, the lost, the lonely. Bring them in. They bring them in. The servant says, there's still more room. Well, then go out on the roads and the country lanes. Anybody you can find, bring them in. Some translations render it, go out into the highways and hedges, which just always makes me kind of smile. It's like, what, you found a guy stuck in a bush somewhere? Like, hey, you want to come to dinner? And it's like, compel them to come in, which doesn't mean like force them, but persuade them. Because these people aren't going to believe that the master actually wants them there. What kind of country bumpkin sitting in a bush somewhere believes that a high society, highfalutin guy in the town, in the city, has a banquet and he wants this guy there? He's not going to believe it. But you got to say, no, you just got to come. I'm telling you, it's food and drink like you've never had before. The master is as compelling a person as you will have ever met in your life. After all, we're talking about God here. He wants you there. I know it's hard to believe. Just come and see. Just invite, just persuade, just come and see. And bring them in. They're never going to repay, but they're going to have the time of their life. They're going to experience the kingdom of heaven. Because it is a party. It is a great banquet. It is a wedding feast. And here's the bottom line principle. The blessings of the kingdom belong to all who accept the invitation. The blessings of the kingdom belong to all who accept the invitation. Isn't it instructive that 3 people or 3 families refuse to come, but it would seem like dozens and hundreds of others are invited in their place? It's really a picture of God's global mission. There's so many in little nation of Israel that were invited first who won't come. So we're going out into the world and inviting every nation, tribe, people, and language to the banquet feast of God. Have you received the invitation? The blessings of the kingdom are yours if you receive the invitation. You can receive it right now by faith. You can say, God, if you're opening your heart and home to a rebel sinner like me, to a loser like me, I'm so lame in so many ways, and you want me, well, then I'm opening my heart to you. Yes, I want to draw near to you. Yes, I want to know you. I haven't known you before. I've been estranged and alienated, but I want to come near. You can just receive it right now. And then once you do, you get to invite others to come along. That's always been God's plan. He blesses us in order to be a blessing to others. We're saved in order to seek others. A pastor and writer, Robbie Gallaty, says, the gospel comes to you on the way to someone else. God never intended for your salvation to be an end, but a beginning. God saved you to be a conduit through whom His glorious, life-changing gospel would flow to others. I love his use of the word conduit there. We talked about this earlier in the fall. We're all together a priesthood of believers. Every Christian is a priest. That is a vital link between heaven and earth, between God and people who don't yet know Him. And we're just conduits and channels of God's grace. We get all of it that we could possibly use because it's all flowing through us, but it's coming to us on the way to others. Now, what would this look like for us if we really engage in hospitality, Jesus style here? Well, let me close with just a few possibilities, a few ideas and applications. Okay, so for starters, what could we do here? Well, let's take literally this call to be hospitable to people with disabilities. There are lots of people in our world with physical disabilities. We're all lame at some level in our souls, but some of us are lame in our limbs. We're blind. And that can be so isolating. We can be so overlooked and forgotten. Jesus says, center these people. Bring them from the margins to my table. You know, I love that we have a disability ministry, a special needs ministry. You might get involved in that. We do respite night for families touched by disability every month. Join that team. Be a buddy on Sundays with people who have disabilities, that families could come and worship and get just a little momentary break on a Sunday. We have Night to Shine, our special needs prom coming up in February. We've gone live with it. We already have hundreds of people signed up. What if you signed up and volunteered and didn't just give a precious young man or woman a great night, but what if you then reached out to the family and said, hey, could I have you in my home? I so enjoyed serving your son or daughter. I'd love to have all of you in my home. Would you come over in a couple weeks? I'd love to get your contact information and just open my home to you. I'd love to get to know you more. What a great ministry that would be. Who knows how the gospel might travel that way? By the way, if you need an excuse to get started, tomorrow, that is Monday, November 13th, is World Kindness Day. We're all being called to be kind tomorrow. What if you were kind to somebody with a disability in your neighborhood and just reach out and serve them, or anybody else for that matter? By the way, you know, there are world and national days every day for something. In fact, you can go to the National Day calendar online, and every day you can see all the things that it's the national day of. And you know, you might just use those as kind of fun and creative excuses to be hospitable. For example, this week, Wednesday's National Bundt Cake Day. Make a bundt cake and give it to somebody. Friday's National Homemade Bread Day. That'd be a great thing to do for someone else. Bake bread for them. Saturday's National Vichyssoise Day, which I had to look up. What is that? It's potato leek soup. Next Saturday, make a big tureen of it. Invite your neighbors like, hey, did you know it's National Vichyssoise Day? Of course you didn't, but it is, and I made some. Come on over. You know, a couple weeks ago, in our live service, we were talking about hospitality and party, and some folks shared how on Saturday mornings, they just have donuts on their front porch. They invite their neighbors, people out walking the dog. Hey, come on up. We got more donuts again this week. Come on up. People stop by. Connections are made. Audra Lockman, who helps lead our hospitality team, heard that story and loved it. She's like, I'm doing that next week. And she did. Except I think Audra has a big house and probably doesn't have a front porch. So she just brought her patio furniture straight out to the street, set it up, had a fire pit, had donuts and coffee, invited her neighbors. People were stopping by saying hello. They loved it. And so did Audra. She's like, I'm doing this every month. That's the kind of thing we can do. Here's another one for all of us. Pray about this. Pray daily and diligently. I just heard this idea this week from another pastor in Portland, and I'm doing it. Every day at 1 o'clock, he stops to pray, just for the spread of the gospel, for people who are far from God. Every day at 1 o'clock, a little alarm goes off on my phone, and I'm going to be praying too. And just saying, God, would you grant us, reconciling love for the world that Jesus, through us, is working to restore. God, would you reach people who are far from you but near to us? God, pray that you'd save many. But would you allow me to be instrumental for at least one? What if the hundreds, the 1,000 people who call Willowdale their church said, God, every day, save many. And would you let me be instrumental for at least one? This is how the gospel is going to grow and how it's going to go. And may you go on mission. Let's do this together and see what God will do. Amen? God be with you.
Thanks for checking out our online teaching. If you enjoyed this content and would like some more information about us, head over to our website at www.willowdalechapel.org or download our app. There you can stay up to date on any events, ministries, and other opportunities we have coming up at Willowdale Chapel.